How's it going, everyone? It's Otaku tapping back at you with another video, another little walk, and I'll let everybody know it seems a little more windy today than the other days, but I really need to learn how to edit wind out. But anyway, hope everybody's doing well. If you like the games and the type of content I create, make sure you like, subscribe, click the bell notification so you do not miss a video. And I got something new that I'm going to be starting. I will say at the end of this video. So what I want to talk about is I want to talk a little bit about loneliness. Now obviously this is I wouldn't say like, oh, I'm alone, nobody's in the room. That's not what I'm talking. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely. And I'll talk about that in another video. But the thing with loneliness, there's a quote from Gaara from Naruto, and he says you can't kill your loneliness, right? Gaara's a pretty lonely individual, and the thing is, he's right. There's only one thing that can kill your loneliness. Now, if you're an Access man watching this, or you're just an otaku and don't have anybody, you're probably going to understand what I'm going to say in this video. But the thing with loneliness is, I mentioned before how this is more deadly than smoking like several packs of cigarettes a day, right? And that's already bad enough, but your mental obviously affects your physical health, when you're getting into all that. I'm sorry for this loud noise, y'all. There's some big truck, I don't know why he was doing that, but whatever. Anyway, I have no idea how to edit that out, so I'll have to learn. But anyway, the thing, as I was saying, with loneliness is there's only one way to kill this. And I'm gonna tell you now, if you're an Access otaku man, or just a lonely otaku woman, you know the answer. You might not want to admit it, but you know the answer. And there's only one answer to this, and that's to find someone to kill the loneliness for you. And that's the only answer. So when it comes to loneliness, you can't do it by yourself. And you hear all this bullshit alpha male talk, be okay with being alone by yourself, or all that. And it's yeah, sure, that's good at times, to be alone by yourself at times, but more so than not, it's not, right? Obviously these people, they give very terrible advice, very terrible advice, but the thing with loneliness is you feel like you're pretty much drowning, right? It's a lot different than actual physical drowning. Physical drowning, you don't really feel any pain. You just can't breathe. The thing with loneliness is it's way more than that. Not only do you feel like you can't breathe, not only do you feel like you're drowning, but you're in intense emotional pain. Some of the You know, it's one of the worst emotional pains that exist in this world. And, you know, I've dealt with this since I was the age of 7. And it really don't get any better. You know, and it's like, you know, oh, people be like, oh, well, go to groups, go to this, do that. It's like, you know, just like I talked about in my video the other day, like, about Discord groups. Like, it's a total shit show. Like, it's a total shit show. And, you know, other groups like this Facebook groups or whatever, it's like, you know, I talked about that too. So yeah, if you haven't seen that video, go watch it. But the thing with loneliness is, like, it's very brutal to have to endure, you know, and it's like that is a fight that you will not win. You can't win that fight alone. And I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers here. You know, I know this is like a Christian, kind of like a Christian channel in a way, Christian-based, however you want to call it. But look, these Christians that tell you, oh, you're never alone, that you've got God, you know, all this stuff. This is the most dismissive shit I've ever heard. Like, because it's BS. Like, you know, yeah, you do have God. Like, you do have God. That's true. But that is a BS thing to say in that situation, because God did not make you and say, well, you only need me and nothing else. You know, and it's like, people be like, well, if you have God, you don't need anything. And they'll try to force you to say that, right? And it's like, oh, okay, so I don't need to eat, I don't need to shower, I don't need to, you know, I don't need to do anything. I just think about God all day, and that's going to solve all my problems. No, it's not. Like, that is not Christianity. I can tell you that now. That's not what the message of Christianity is. But, like, you know, they'll tell you stuff, like, a lot of them will tell you stuff like this because they simply just do not care. They claim they're Christian, but they don't care, right? But, like, you know, God made you to where you need human beings, regardless if you're a woman or man. You know, you have to have human connection. And if you can't get that, then yeah, you're going to have very poor mental health. You know, you more than likely may die years before you would if you didn't have that problem, right? And it's like, you know, another thing too is, like, if you're autistic on top of this, like, it's really brutal too. You know, I know this all too well, but you know, it's thing with loneliness is it doesn't, you know, they'll say, oh, well, time heals all wounds, you know. They say that. And it's like, that's bullshit too. That's dismissiveness. You know, there's a song I listen to, it's basically about wanting to go back in time and, you know, refix everything, you know, try to start over to get relationships and just a lot of other stuff it talks about. But anyway, in the song, you know, they say, they say that time will always heal. And then there's another guy who screams out, then ask me how I really feel. So what this guy is essentially saying is, you know, he's been told, oh, well, time heals all wounds. He's been told this 10, 20, hell, 30 years maybe, right? And 10, 20, 30 years later, he's, you know, he or she is still dealing with this. They're still dealing with the pain of this problem. And, you know, it's like, you know, ask them how they really feel then. If time heals all wounds, seriously, ask them how they really feel. But they won't do that because they don't care, right? And it's like, you know, a lot of Christians say they're of God, but really they're of the Matrix. I'll be honest with you, they really are. Especially like these people in organized religion, in the public church field, that they only care about like a certain class, you know, so you're lonely there too, bro. Like they only care about a certain class, the middle class, you know, if you don't have the car, the job, the certain job or whatever, certain status, they don't give a flying flip about you. Like, you know, they'll even treat you differently, show partiality towards their own status, and then they just don't care. And it's brutal to have to deal with that. And you know, like, worst case scenario when for loneliness is if you have autophobia. Now, autophobia, I'll sum this down. It's basically an intense fear of being alone, the fear of loneliness, and all of that, right? Like abandonment. And it's like, you know, this phobia is actually amplified. Like, this phobia is very life-crippling in and of itself, but it's actually amplified to the max frequency when this is a true reality for you. Because, you know, once you know that, once you see that, there's no going back. And that right there, you know, you'll be lucky if you don't seppuku. I'll be honest, you really will. I mean, I hope you don't, but you know, there's been so many men and women who seppuku'd because, you hear like of all these things, oh, you are not alone, or whatever, on a lot of these mental health things, and it's like, you know, this is bullshit. I'm going to call this out for what it really is. It's bullshit, because these people are really alone. Because if they wasn't getting paid to do this, then yes, that quote is bullshit. It's all about them getting the money from it. And like, you know, and even then they don't care really. Like when they're getting the money, they really don't care either, you know. But it's like, you know, there's not really all this help like they claim. I mean, sure, if you're maybe casually thinking about it, like, I mean, like somebody who thinks about it quite often, somebody who's the highest depressed person like that they can get. Look, there ain't no help for these people. I'm gonna be honest with you. There's not. Like, I hate to say this, but like, you know, they are doomed to suffer with this for the rest of their life. Like, you know, there was even people in the Bible that was like this, that was doomed to suffer with this stuff for the rest of their life. And you know, that's brutal, you know, because we obviously live in a fallen world and such, but like, you know, loneliness doesn't go away on its own. You know, as a matter of fact, it grows into something much darker. You know, like, and as time goes on, the darker it becomes. You know, the harder the rain falls, the cloudier it gets. You know, you may be so lonely that you may just have, picture a field, right? And you got real dark clouds everywhere. And it's pouring down hail, you know, or raining down hail, sorry. Pouring down rain, and there's like F5 tornadoes all over the place. That right there is the power of loneliness. Now think about what an F5 can do. That's exact. You know, as a matter of fact, I would even argue that it's even worse than that. But like, that's just the best analogy I know how to use right now. But it's pretty intense. It's really intense, and it doesn't go away on its own. And it's like medication does not make this go away. That's bullshit too. That stuff does not solve the problem. You know, that's a problem that has to be solved for you to get over it. And the only way to solve this problem, be around like-minded individuals, be around people with the same hobbies, you know, people who actually care about you, a true, genuine friend, true, genuine family member, true, genuine spouse, you know, stuff like that. But like, you know, even then, you know, you hear about all these people. Hell, you know, you already hear about them being lonely in friendships and stuff, but like, you even hear about people all the time. You know, I've seen this on Reddit and just different places about, you know, people complaining, men and women, you know, people talking about like, I'm lonely in marriage, right? And I feel like that's probably even worse than, you know, dealing with it. So take it like this. Say you're truly alone, right? And then, you know, you don't have a spouse or whatever, and you're lonely. If you add like a person who's married to that, and then like they're lonely in marriage, honestly, I kind of feel like the guy the person who's married, their loneliness is probably going to kind of tip the scale in their favor of more pain. Because, you know, like you have a spouse and all that, they're supposed to be the one to cure and kill all this, right? And this is a common issue, like within a lot of marriages, right? You know, I see it all the time. And it's like, you know, that's a brutal place to be in too. You know, and family members as well. Like, you can't confide in them either. You know, family just ain't what it once was. You know, the family dynamic it's out the window because of narcissism. Narcissism took over. Gaslighting took over. You know, it's like, you hear this stupid thing like, oh, don't let the devil destroy family. Bro, the devil's already done that. Like, he's already accomplished that goal. It's like, you know, if you believe otherwise, then you're a moron. Because all you got to do is look around. Look around. Look at everything happening with the family dynamics. You know, like his boy, right? Like he was like 12. Literally, you know, he was grounded. Like his dad grounded him from like his Nintendo Switch, and then like this boy, got in his gun cabinet and literally blew his brains out. Like, I'm not even joking. Just because he got grounded. So it's like, you know, you can't even discipline, a lot of people can't even discipline their kids anymore without that kind of stuff happening. That like, you know, because parents are irresponsible. You know, that they have all this stuff like that laying around, and, you know, that's just, that's unfortunate. That's brutal. I mean, the boy apparently was like autistic and then didn't apparently know what he was doing, but who knows if that's true, I don't know. But it's like, you know, you can't really win for lose when it comes to this stuff, because it's just, I don't know, this whole thing with loneliness is just brutal. But, you know, like, this is what I'm having to talk about, like, because the reason I mention that is because you got to watch even who you talk to now, because everybody's dangerous a lot of times, especially within westernized cultures and society. Like, it's a brutal place to live in. It's like, you know, a lot of people are finding that out, that like, this is not really a good place to live. But, you know, I expect this problem to get much, much worse, to be honest. And I just don't think it's going to get any better. I really don't. You know, and another thing, like, one more thing I want to add in this video about loneliness is, you know, people who are so lonely, you know, they're so desperate for human connection, to be seen. They go and do things that they shouldn't do to try to be seen, right? Like I mentioned, you know, before, with that boy. But that was a different story. But I was using that story to kind of just paint the picture of this is the things that go on. But like, anyway, it's just, I don't know, it's brutal. But anyway, it's rough. But I wish that it would be really, really good. But you know, it's not going to be good. So anyway, that'll do it for this video. You know, are you personally experiencing loneliness? Do you experience loneliness throughout your whole life? You know, if you're an otaku, let me know. But yep, that'll do it for this video. And God bless you guys, and I will see you all next time. Peace.
Add it to it.
Hey guys. I ended that video I just did, and then I was like, well, I forgot to tell everybody what I had coming, so I'll just add this to the video at the end. But I also plan on doing something that I've not really seen a lot of, like, anybody do. And I plan on talking about how, with a lot of these songs, like, you know, these people who like be like, oh, I hate men, or whatever, just, you know, saying whatever BS that comes to their mind, right? I'm going to use a lot of these songs that they make to prove that what they're saying is BS. You know, that like, this isn't the case when Chad comes around, right? But yep, anyway, you know, you guys take care, and I'll see you later.